if I said, next week, I am going to watch you. I will surveil your neighborhood to see if you do anything illegal. Why, you might ask? Because the data I have on your family, your neighbors, and your residential community all indicate that you are more likely to engage in criminal activity. What do you think? Are my actions justified? How do you feel about that? This is a simple example of a police tactic called predictive policing. Predictive policing is defined as the application of analytical techniques, particularly quantitative techniques, to identify likely targets for police intervention and to prevent crime or solve past crimes by making statistical predictions. What that means is that police infer from past crime data where geographically crime should occur, or who, as in which specific people are likely to commit a crime. Police departments vary in the way that they incorporate predictive policing into their work. Many, as with established data-driven solutions, dispatch additional police presence to the target location. Any new data on the incidence of crime in that neighborhood is then fed back into the analysis, and the process starts over again. In cities throughout the United States, this is happening. In St. Louis, New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago just signed up. All told, U.S. police departments have committed millions of dollars in public funds to predictive policing. And predictive policing has bipartisan appeal. Both conservatives and liberals support its use. Predictive policing software providers include for-profit corporations like Predpol, Unchlat, and Palantir. They claim that their products help predict crime. But the data on the subject is cloudier than what their claims suggest. Predictive policing models operate by setting an algorithm, basically software that hunts for patterns, loose on a data set. In this case, crime data. The patterns the algorithm finds are called a model. The model then predicts future patterns. It sounds straightforward, but it isn't. Why, you may ask? I will highlight 5 interrelated reasons. First, the production of crime data. Second, bias. Third, the number of variables that produce crime. Fourth, group level versus individual characteristics. And 5, inaccuracies. First, crime itself is a product of policing. There is no record of a crime without a citizen reporting it or law enforcement discovering it. If you commit a crime and no one notices, did it happen? According to the official crime data, the answer is no. This is significant. Whites don't have the same amount of interaction with police as blacks, and also they don't have the same kinds of interaction with police as blacks. This difference is encoded in the crime data. For instance, nationwide, crime data suggests that blacks use illegal drugs more than whites. Certainly they are arrested and convicted of drug-related crimes at a higher rate than whites. But numerous studies have invalidated this claim. Whites and blacks use illegal drugs at nearly identical rates. What can account for this contradiction? One answer is greater police presence in black neighborhoods. This is one example of bias in the data, but there are many others. Some are so embedded, we don't even recognize them. The problem is that there is a lot of social, historic, and economic baggage built into the crime data. This is particularly true of racial bias. Crime data is compromised by a legacy of institutional racism. The software producers claim they don't use variables that describe protected classes, like race, but it shows up anyway, and proxy variables that they do use. Zip code is an example. How? Think of redlining, the practice of preventing black homeowners from buying property outside designated areas by denying them home loans. You can see the legacy of redlining in the zip code data. Today, redlining is illegal. But by acting in accordance with the data redlining produced, we perpetuate the inequality the Fair Housing Act was put in place to stop. This is an example, but there are other variables: income level, educational attainment, prior police encounters. All of these are also closely correlated with race. That is a hard problem, but there are more issues. Crime data is notoriously difficult to interpret. There are so many variables that contribute to crime. Demographic, economic, social, health, employment, political, law enforcement, and many other factors all contribute to the incidence of crime. There are ethical concerns too about how these models rank variables. At this point, they usually weight group-level characteristics more than individual characteristics. Where you live, the unemployment rate there, and your family's criminal history are all weighted more heavily than your own criminal history. Should any person's interaction with police be determined based on others' behavior? Is that ethical? Last, data sets contain inaccuracies. Even given the tools to correct inaccuracies in big data sets, the work to do it would be expensive, labor-intensive, and also technically challenging. Altogether, this evidence suggests that more than predicting crime, predictive policing algorithms predict policing. That is, they predict where police will be deployed, and by using them, police departments risk reproducing and increasing bias in the criminal justice system. Now, the corporations that push predictive policing argue that official crime statistics are all we have to go on. They're better than nothing, right? The research that they produce in-house shows that predictive policing models lead to a modest reduction in reported crime, but their studies haven't been independently verified. So bear that in mind. There are some things that we are sure about, however. My colleagues at the Human Rights Data Analysis Group's Policing Project, William Isaac and Christian Lum, did a study, the results of which were published in a journal called Significance. What they found was alarming. They performed a simulation on a synthetic population that approximates the residential population in Oakland, California. This animation is a visual representation of the results. The black dots represent an incident of drug crime reported in the official crime data. The red squares are where the predictive policing model, this one used by Predpol, urges police to go. The model sends police officers to areas where their crime data shows more drug crime. These communities have large Black, Latino, and low-income populations. Police deploy to these areas where they find more crime, but it is because they are there. This new data feeds back into the model, which identifies a higher incidence of drug crime in that area relative to neighboring areas, and again suggests the deployment of police to that area. On and on and on it goes. And then that's until you have this, an image of estimated drug use versus an image of reported drug crime. Again, police discovering crime in an area does not mean that there is more illegal drug use there. It only means that more illegal drug crime was found. So what looked like an unbiased, objective prediction now looks like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If policing in an area is disproportionate to the amount of real criminal activity, that is discriminatory policing. And these models help produce that. This is especially concerning given the incidents of police violence committed against Black and brown people over the years. Across the country, police disproportionately arrest Blacks. Those arrests lead to more arrests, street stops, and warrant sweeps. In the courts, it leads to harsher sentencing and higher conviction rates. Given the situation, it is unsurprising that many communities would elect to avoid any interaction with law enforcement, full stop. The community's needs are competing with these predictions, and this strains police-civilian relationships even more. Other studies have examined the impact of different predictive models on targeted communities, and the results are also worrisome. Predictive models have been used in courts to predict recidivism, like repeat offending, or probation or parole violations in defendants. And ProPublica found that one of these models was almost twice as likely to incorrectly predict a Black defendant as high risk versus a white defendant. These models are in use in states across the country. This is very concerning, and top minds in the criminal justice field agree. As these models become normalized in the criminal justice system, they have significant impact on people, their families, whole communities, and the criminal justice system as a whole. The data is biased, thus the models are biased. And even given a perfect and complete record of the past, statistics aren't a crystal ball. The past isn't a perfect guide to the future. The producers of these models and the police departments that use them would do well to remember that. And some police departments are catching on. Several California police departments have decided against using these models. San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond, Milpitas, and Burbank. It may sound as though I am railing against the use of analytics and data-driven approaches in law enforcement and crime prevention, period. But that's not the case. Instead, what I'm saying is we need a more critical and considerate implementation of these tools. Police must assess their role within the community, the various tools at their disposal, and their values when thinking about the utility of new technologies in their work. However complex and detailed the analysis, algorithmic data mining techniques are ill-equipped to direct police on who, what, when, where, why, and how to police. Rather than relying on these tools for guidance, police should turn elsewhere. They should look to the policymakers, the stakeholders, the researchers, and communities above all. Those are the people they serve. And also, they should be more transparent about how they use these predictive policing models, ideally before implementing them, inviting public engagement and evaluation. We don't yet know if these models work the way we want them to. And frankly, we can't. This is because the companies that produce these models use proprietary techniques. We don't have the data or the algorithms they use to produce their analysis. If the data is kept private or classified, journalists, researchers, civil rights groups, and even the police departments themselves can't understand how they function. Despite all of this, police departments are still buying and using predictive policing models. But I have hope. Given more collaboration with researchers to develop a more accurate picture of crime, greater attention to police-community relations, and more equitable policing practices, more police departments will come to understand how damaging these tools can be. The stakes are very high in criminal justice. It is important to get answers that are accurate, fair, and just.